Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of extreme, almost comforting precision.
Right, like it's very clinical.
Exactly. It's like engineering or something.
Hmm.
If you fall and, say, break your arm, you go to the hospital, and the doctor puts you in front of an X-ray machine,
Yeah, and there it is.
right? You see that jagged, like, undeniable white line right across the bone. The doctor points to it, you look at it, and the diagnosis is just absolute.
It's completely binary at that point. I mean, it's a yes or a no.
Yeah, broken or not broken, it's clean, it's objective, and literally everyone in the room can agree on the reality of the situation.
And we crave that. Human beings are deeply, fundamentally uncomfortable with ambiguity,
Oh, for sure.
especially when it comes to danger or harm. We like things to be visible, to be categorized, and to be easily identifiable so we can just, fix them.
But then you step out of the hospital and into the real world, specifically into the world of community safety and hidden predators.
Yeah, and that's where things get complicated.
Completely complicated.
Hmm.
Because suddenly you realize that our societal X-ray machine is just entirely broken.
Oh, absolutely.
When we try to diagnose the health of a neighborhood or the safety of a local institution, we aren't looking at a clear black and white image anymore.
Not at all.
We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky. It's full of shadows, blind spots, and things that, look like solid bone, but are actually fracturing right beneath the surface.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters.
Uh-huh.
And the real danger there is that because the surface looks intact, nobody thinks to ask for an MRI.
Right.
Nobody looks deeper until the fracture literally breaks the skin.
Which brings us to today. Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is heavy, but I cannot overstate how incredibly vital it is.
It really is.
We are taking a magnifying glass to a shocking local event that remained almost completely invisible to the broader public right up until this exact week.
Yeah, the timing on this is crucial.
The goal here is to extract the crucial lessons about community safety, about the nature of trust, and perhaps most importantly, about institutional responsibility.
Exactly. And we have some very specific materials we're looking at to do this.
We do. We are drawing heavily on a stack of specific sources. Primarily, we're looking at excerpts from a local Murfreesboro, Tennessee production called What Happened Next Door, and why almost no one knew about it.
Which is a fascinating document.
It is. And alongside that, we have a very specific, crucial addendum note we received titled The Anatomy of a Predator.
And I think it's important to note right off the bat, while the geographic footprint of this documentation is intensely localized to Murfreesboro, the mechanics of it are not.
No, not at all.
The way this happened and the way it was systematically hidden, well, those mechanisms are universal. This is really a blueprint of how communities fail.
So true. And I want you, the listener, to just stop and imagine something for a second. Put yourself in your own neighborhood.
Yeah. Visualize your own street.
Imagine a pillar of your community. Someone you've waved to from your driveway for decades.
Someone who feels safe.
Exactly. Someone whose name is woven into the very fabric of your town's institutions, like the local gyms, the youth programs, the church groups.
The guy everybody knows.
Right. Now imagine that exact person suddenly being convicted of 8 counts of rape.
It's staggering to even think about.
And yet nobody in your town hears a single whisper about it. It doesn't make the front page of the paper.
There are no community town halls.
Nothing. Not during the agonizing months of the investigation, not during the trial, not even at the moment of conviction.
Just silence.
It is a total suffocating silence right up until his final appeal is denied in March of 2026. How does that happen?
How does a community just swallow a secret that massive?
Exactly. That question is the very core of what we are examining today.
And we have to frame this overarching theme very carefully because this isn't just a true crime summary.
No, we're not just doing a timeline of offenses here.
Right. Just walking through a timeline doesn't do justice to the immense sociological weight of what this documentation reveals.
Yeah, there's so much more beneath the surface.
This is really a structural look at how proximity creates enormous blind spots. It's about how the very institutions we rely on for community, for health, and for safety can inadvertently build a fortress around abusers.
Build it right out of their own bureaucratic silence.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this timeline, because to understand the mechanics of the silence, we first have to understand the noise,
We have to look at the catalyst.
Right. We have to look at the exact moment this massive illusion of safety shattered for one young woman.
To find that catalyst, we have to go back to what should have been an entirely unremarkable, quiet Sunday evening in July of 2021.
July 2021. It's a normal summer night in a seemingly normal, quiet Murfreesboro neighborhood.
Very picturesque, really.
When you read the descriptions of this area from the source, it's exactly the kind of place where people share gardening tools over the fence.
Where kids ride their bikes in the street.
Yeah, where you inherently trust the man living next door. So around 7:30 p.m. that Sunday, a 20-year-old woman realizes she has several missed calls from a number she doesn't immediately recognize.
Right.
She returns the call, and it turns out to be her neighbor, a man named Rick Canada.
And she's known him for a long time, right?
Literally since she was a child. He's been a fixture there forever.
And this is where the dark psychology of deception and grooming really begins to show its architecture.
It really does.
Because he tells her he needs a favor. He says he needs help with a, quote, class project.
And the detail here is chilling in its sheer specificity. He says he needs access to her elbows and her knees for this academic project.
Which is such a bizarre request on paper.
It is. He asked her to just pop over to his house for a minute.
Yeah.
And, because of who he was in her mind.
The decades of proximity.
Exactly. Because of the literal decades of geographic proximity and assumed trust, she goes.
She doesn't even question it.
She doesn't call a friend. She doesn't hesitate. She just walks right over.
Which is exactly what the abuser is banking on. It's a textbook example of grooming, but not just the grooming of an individual.
What do you mean?
It's the grooming of an entire environment. He has leveraged the inherent safety of the word neighbor.
Wow. Yeah, I really want to push back on this concept of trust for a second, though, because we hear these stories, and from the outside, hindsight makes everything look like a red flag.
Oh, sure. Hindsight is 20/20.
But in the moment, it clearly wasn't a red flag to her. How exactly does a predator weaponize banality?
That's the perfect word for it, banality.
When I read that detail about the elbows and knees, I was completely struck by it. It's like the classic wolf in sheep's clothing warning. But the wolf isn't hiding in the woods. He's the guy offering to lend you his lawnmower.
That's a great analogy.
How does the incredibly mundane nature of a class project about joints completely override a young woman's natural, deeply ingrained survival instincts? Why did the alarm bells ring?
It's precisely because it's banal that the alarm bells stay silent. Think about how our brain's threat detection system actually works.
The amygdala, right?
Exactly, the amygdala.
Yeah.
It is constantly scanning our environment for recognizable archetypes of danger.
Like a stranger in a dark alley.
Right, or a sudden aggressive movement, or a demand that overtly crosses a sexual or physical boundary.
So if he had asked for something obviously creepy.
If he had called and asked for something overtly intimate, the amygdala fires immediately, adrenaline spikes, the boundary is recognized and defended.
But elbows and knees, it's almost boring.
Exactly. It's clinical, it sounds vaguely academic, maybe medical or artistic.
Yeah.
It completely bypasses the brain's neurological security system because it doesn't fit any known archetype of danger.
Wow.
It's the conversational equivalent of a Trojan horse. And when you pair that seemingly innocent, incredibly specific request with a lifetime of neighborly waving.
Like years of seeing this man mow his lawn, take out his trash, wave to her parents.
Yes. The victim's brain doesn't just fail to see danger, it actively tells her, this is safe. This is just a minor, slightly weird chore for a familiar face.
The cognitive dissonance is just staggering. She's operating on the script of helping a neighbor. But the reality she walked into when she crossed his threshold was the furthest thing from a classroom project.
It was a trap.
When you look at the police reports and the documentation from the sources of what she found inside his home, it is a scene out of a nightmare.
It's deeply disturbing.
She finds a highly staged environment. There is a pallet of sheets laid out deliberately on the floor. There are lit candles.
Yeah, the candles.
There's an anatomy book. And, most horrifyingly, there is a camera mounted securely on a tripod, angled and pointed directly at the pallet of sheets on the ground.
The sheer level of premeditation that this scene communicates is what makes this so dark.
Yes. I really want to dwell on that because I think
Yeah.
society has this comforting lie we tell ourselves about sexual violence.
That it's impulsive.
Right, that it's a crime of sudden, uncontrollable passion, a momentary lapse of judgment. But this scene completely destroys that myth.
It absolutely dismantles it. Let's analyze the mechanics of that staging for a second. A pallet on the floor requires moving furniture and arranging bedding. Lighting candles requires a specific atmospheric or lighting intent.
It takes time.
It takes time. But the tripod is the most damning element. setting up a tripod, attaching a camera, checking the viewfinder, adjusting the height to frame the shot perfectly on the sheets.
You don't just trip and do that.
No, that requires technical consideration and minutes, if not hours, of physical adjustment. This is not an impulsive act. It is a meticulously planned, highly curated operational trap.
And the anatomy book. I can't stop thinking about the anatomy book.
Right, the anatomy book is a particularly insidious psychological prop.
Why do you think it was there?
It's left out to legitimize the class project lie right up until the very last possible second.
Oh, wow. So she walks in, sees the weird setup, but then sees the book and thinks, oh, it really is a project.
Exactly. It's there to confuse her, to make her second-guess her own rising panic. It's a tool to buy the predator a few more moments of compliance.
It's terrifying because it shows how deeply he understood the human mind. He knew she would look for a reason to rationalize the weirdness of the room, so he provided the visual cue.
He built the rationalization for her.
Thankfully, incredibly thankfully, the victim's survival instincts finally kicked into massive overdrive.
Her bravery here is astounding.
It really is. The context of the room eventually shattered the illusion of the neighbor. Within minutes, she realized something was terribly, fundamentally wrong.
She saw through the prop.
She did. She managed to escape the house. And within hours of this happening, she is sitting at the local police station, shaking and terrified, reporting exactly what happened. She physically escaped the trap.
She did. And her immense bravery in refusing to rationalize it away and going straight to the authorities is the sole reason this entire dark ecosystem was blown wide open.
The only reason.
But while she physically got out of that house, that one specific detail she reported to the police, the camera mounted on the tripod, pointed at the sheets, that detail opened up an entirely new, hidden digital nightmare for the investigators.
Which brings us to the search warrants.
Yeah.
And this is where the entire landscape of the story shifts.
We move from the physical world to the digital one.
Right. We move from the physical geography of a Murfreesboro neighborhood into the boundless, terrifying geography of the digital landscape.
Yeah.
Within days of her reporting the assault, detectives move in and execute a search warrant at Rick Canada's home. Obviously, the primary target of this warrant is the camera.
They need that camera.
They need the camera, and they need any digital storage devices that might be related to the crime.
And when they toss the house, they find an absolute mountain of technology.
I mean, a staggering amount.
The documentation notes they recovered multiple electronic devices. We're talking various cell phones, a laptop, an iPad, external hard drives, USB flash drives.
Essentially, the entire digital footprint of a modern human life.
Exactly, they find all of that. But the camera itself, the literal camera that was sitting on the tripod just days earlier,
Right.
it is conspicuously, glaringly missing. It is nowhere to be found in the physical house.
So where is it? Because when investigators confront Canada about this missing piece of evidence, he tells them exactly where it is.
He doesn't even lie about it.
No. He says the camera is at his workplace. And his workplace at that time is the Murfreesboro Athletic Club, the MAC.
Just sitting there at the gym.
So the detectives don't waste any time. They accompany him to the MAC, they go into the facility, and they do, in fact, recover a Canon PowerShot camera along with an SD card.
But when they examined the SD card, they realized it had been wiped.
Wiped clean.
It was wiped, yes. But importantly, it was not destroyed. And that is an absolutely crucial distinction in the world of digital forensics.
I want to pause here because I have a very specific, almost philosophical question about this sequence of events.
Okay, let's hear it.
Why move the literal smoking gun to a public athletic club? I struggle to understand the rationale here.
It seems counterintuitive.
Right. Was this just a panicked, irrational attempt to get the most incriminating object out of his house before the cops showed up? Or does this hint at a deeper, more terrifying level of hubris? The idea that he felt so incredibly secure in his public persona, so insulated by his community standing, that he actually thought a bustling local gym was the safest vault for a weapon used in a sexual assault.
From a behavioral analysis standpoint, it is almost certainly a combination of both, but leaning heavily, heavily toward hubris.
Really? Hubris over panic.
Yes. Hiding a piece of criminal evidence in a place that is fundamentally associated with health, wellness, family, and community trust is a profound violation of that physical space.
It's disgusting, honestly.
It shows a staggering level of compartmentalization. He views his workplace not as a community sanctuary, but as his own personal shield.
Like, they'll never look here because I'm the manager here.
Exactly. He thinks the badge protects the bag, essentially. But it also speaks to a fascinating phenomenon regarding the false security of digital deletion.
Oh, this is so interesting. Let's talk about the wiping.
Most people, even highly educated people, do not actually understand how computer memory works.
I probably don't, to be honest.
They believe that dragging a file to the little digital trash bin icon or hitting format on an SD card makes the data dissolve into the ether.
Like, it just vanishes.
Right. They think it's like burning a piece of paper. But forensic analysts know that is not how data storage operates.
Okay, can you explain the mechanics of that? Because I think a lot of listeners might not fully grasp how a wiped card can still hold a criminal conviction. How does that actually work?
Okay, think of a hard drive or an SD card, like a massive library.
Okay, a library.
A massive library with millions of books, and there's a master catalog at the front desk.
Got it.
When you record a video, you are essentially writing a book and putting it on a specific shelf, and the computer writes down the location in the master catalog.
Right, so it knows where to find it later.
Exactly. Now, when you hit delete, or when you wipe an SD card without using specialized, like, military-grade shredding software.
The computer doesn't actually go into the library and burn the book.
Precisely. It simply erases the entry in the master catalog.
Oh, wow.
It tells the system, hey, the space on shelf 4B is now available if you need to put something new there.
But the book is still there.
Until a new piece of data, new ones and zeros, is physically written over that exact spot, the original video file is still sitting right there on the shelf in the dark.
That is wild.
It's invisible to the average user, but to a forensic analyst with the right software, they just bypass the catalog entirely and scan the shelves directly.
And the forensic analysts in Murfreesboro proved exactly that. They pulled the ghosts right out of the machine.
They did.
By scanning the raw data of that SD card, they were able to recover the deleted video of the assault on the neighbor.
It was still on the shelf.
Still there. They found remnants of the video deeply embedded in the card's architecture, and crucially, they found digital evidence proving that the footage had been deliberately transferred from the card to a flash drive using his laptop.
This creates a fascinating tension between a physical crime and its digital permanence.
Yeah, the contrast is stark.
The physical act in that staged room was over in a matter of minutes. But the digital record of it duplicates, it moves, it hides, and it just waits.
Now, before we move on, we have to highlight a very strict, crucial point from the source material regarding the Murfreesboro Athletic Club.
Yes, this is very important.
We must be entirely clear about the facts here. There's absolutely no evidence establishing that Rick Canada filmed anyone at the Murfreesboro Athletic Club itself.
That is correct, and it is vital to state that clearly, so we are impartially reporting the facts. The documentation is explicit. No evidence of filming at the MAC.
However, the very fact that a digital camera used in a violent, staged crime was physically transported to and found at a public facility.
A facility where families, young people, and the community gather every single day.
Exactly. That fact alone demands intense public scrutiny. It fundamentally alters how we have to view the proximity of danger.
It forces the community to reckon with a terrifying juxtaposition.
It really does. It's that cognitive dissonance again. You have a literal weapon used in a staged assault sitting quietly in a gym bag or locker or an office drawer at the local athletic club.
While 50 feet away, people are running on treadmills.
Yeah, taking spin classes, completely oblivious to what's sitting in the manager's office. It connects the physical location of the camera to a broader, much more disturbing question.
Which is?
What exactly were Rick Canada's roles in this community? How deep did his roots actually go?
To truly understand the blind spots of Murfreesboro, we have to look closely at what I would call his resume of proximity.
Let's look at it. Because the documentation makes it abundantly clear he wasn't a drifter.
He wasn't some guy passing through town.
He wasn't some stranger living in an isolated cabin on the edge of town. He was deeply embedded.
Deeply.
He worked with Special Kids, an organization dedicated to vulnerable youth.
Which is horrifying to think about.
He managed the Murfreesboro Athletic Club. He served as a director for the YMCA. He taught Sunday school. He worked in hospital rehabilitation centers.
It is an exhaustive, almost unbelievable list of roles.
And what is the common denominator across every single one of those positions?
They inherently deal with highly vulnerable populations.
Every single one.
Children in need of guidance, people in physical recovery who are quite literally lacking bodily autonomy,
Right. At a rehab center.
people seeking spiritual direction in a church setting. We are talking about decades of unmitigated proximity to vulnerability.
When I look at this list, I keep trying to find the right metaphor. I initially thought of a chameleon, right? Someone who blends in.
A chameleon just hides on a leaf, though.
Exactly. That doesn't capture the structural power he held. Rick Canada wasn't a chameleon. He was a load-bearing wall in this community.
Oh, that's a powerful way to put it.
He entrenched himself so deeply into the architecture of these institutions that people likely felt like if they removed him or if they dared to question him, the whole roof might cave in.
He made himself essential.
He made himself structurally indispensable to the very places that were supposed to be safe havens.
Load-bearing wall is a brilliant way to conceptualize the structural power of an abuser in a community setting. And this leads directly to a massive societal misconception that we really need to address here.
Let's do it.
Whenever a community finds out that an older established citizen, in this case, a man in his mid-60s, is arrested for something horrific, society immediately relies on the myth of the sudden snap.
Oh, absolutely. People say, oh, he just lost his mind.
Right. It must be a medical issue.
He had a midlife crisis and made a terrible out-of-character mistake.
We tell ourselves that lie because the alternative is simply too terrifying to sit with.
The alternative means we were fooled.
Yes. If a 65-year-old man can just snap, it's a tragic anomaly. It's like a lightning strike. Nobody can predict lightning.
But the source material we are reviewing is unequivocal here. 65-year-old men do not suddenly, out of nowhere, begin luring their lifelong neighbors into elaborately staged assaults with tripods and anatomy books.
No, they don't.
And they certainly don't start collecting horrific digital material out of the blue. It is not a mistake. It is the culmination of a long-term pattern.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of criminal psychology, this is a textbook behavioral pattern.
How so?
Abusers do not accidentally end up in these jobs. They routinely, deliberately gravitate toward professions and volunteer roles that grant them two crucial things:
Which are?
unearned trust and unquestioned access.
Wow.
Being a YMCA director or a Sunday school teacher, these titles act as a psychological shield, a shield of civic duty. They mask the underlying predatory pattern behind a veneer of altruism.
Okay, before we venture any further into the darkness of what they found on those devices, we need to pause and make a very important, incredibly specific clarification based strictly on the addendum note we received.
Yes, the anatomy of a predator note.
Right. Throughout this deep dive, we have mentioned that he was convicted of 8 counts of rape.
We have.
The source material explicitly, emphatically states that all 8 of those rape convictions are related to the same single victim.
This is a vital constraint in our understanding of the legal reality and the public record of this case.
Exactly. We want to be completely impartial, factual, and accurate here.
We have to stick to the facts.
The source notes that while there is obvious, horrifying evidence of other victims on his digital devices, which we are about to discuss in depth, it is factually inaccurate and legally incorrect to use those 8 counts of rape to label him a serial rapist in the public square.
Because legally, those counts belong to one case, one person.
Right. We are adhering strictly to the facts as laid out in the documents provided. 8 counts, 1 victim.
And precision in language matters deeply, especially when dealing with the legal system and the processing of community trauma. Calling him a serial rapist based on those 8 counts misrepresents the legal proceedings.
It does.
However, as you rightly noted, while the rape convictions pertain to one courageous individual who came forward, the digital devices found in his home unlocked a much darker, broader truth about his history.
Which leads us to the most heartbreaking, agonizing discovery of this entire investigation.
The unallocated space.
The files that the forensic team managed to pull from the unallocated space of those hard drives. The ghosts in the machine.
When digital forensic teams finally cracked into the full depths of those hard drives, laptops, and flash drives, what they found shifted the entire scope of the tragedy.
It wasn't just about the neighbor anymore.
No, it was no longer just about the neighbor.
The sources detail 2 specific, horrific discoveries beyond the initial staged assault.
Let's lay them out.
First, they uncovered child sexual abuse material involving a prepubescent girl.
Horrific.
Second, they found a separate video of an unconscious adult woman being actively violated.
These are entirely separate, distinct victims from the 20-year-old neighbor who reported him.
Yes.
The evidence of these crimes was undeniable. It was on video. And because of this undeniable visual evidence, Canada faced 2 separate counts of sexual exploitation of a minor.
Right.
But here is the agonizing, incredibly frustrating legal reality that the community is grappling with right now.
What happened to those charges?
Those 2 exploitation charges were severed from the main case regarding the neighbor, and today they remain completely, legally unresolved.
Severed and unresolved, meaning they didn't go to trial.
Correct.
The district attorney didn't drop them because they didn't believe the crimes happened, right?
Not at all. The investigators desperately want to pursue them. The DA wants to prosecute.
Their hands aren't tied because of a lack of institutional will or a lack of horrific evidence.
No, their hands are tied because of a lack of identity.
Okay, let's explain this. For those who might not be intimately familiar with the intricacies of criminal court proceedings, the concept of severing charges can seem like a miscarriage of justice.
It feels like the system failing.
But it is actually a foundational rule of how trials work, isn't it?
It is. If a prosecutor is trying a defendant for an assault on victim A, and they attempt to show the jury a video of the defendant assaulting an unidentified victim B just to prove he's a bad guy.
The defense attorney will immediately object.
Immediately, because it prejudices the jury. The defense will argue that the jury is no longer impartially judging the facts of victim A's case. They are just punishing the defendant for victim B's video.
Which makes legal sense, even if it's frustrating.
Exactly. So the judge severs the charges. They say, you can try him for victim A right now, but you have to hold a separate, completely different trial for victim B.
But the authorities simply do not know who victim B is.
I had no idea.
They don't know who the prepubescent child is. They don't know who the unconscious adult woman is. They don't know who else might appear in the dark, encrypted corners of that digital material.
And you cannot hold a trial for victim B if you cannot physically identify victim B.
Because you need them to testify.
Partly, yes. To prosecute a crime, the state has to prove jurisdiction, meaning, did this happen in Murfreesboro or did it happen on a vacation in Florida 10 years ago?
If it happened in Florida, Tennessee can't try it.
Right. They also have to prove the time frame to ensure the statute of limitations hasn't expired. And most importantly, they usually need the victim to verify the crime. Without an identity, the legal system just hits an insurmountable brick wall.
I want to ask you, the listener, to just imagine the psychological weight of this for a moment. Think about the concept of a stolen memory.
That phrase from the source is so evocative, stolen memory.
Someone out there right now, maybe a woman going about her day in Murfreesboro, or maybe someone who moved across the country years ago, has a gap in her memory.
From a night out, maybe, or a medical procedure.
Exactly. Or maybe a young adult is carrying around a heavy, unresolved trauma from their childhood, and they think they just imagined it.
Because nobody ever confirmed it for them.
Right. And they are completely, blissfully, or agonizingly unaware that the literal key to their justice,
The undeniable proof.
the absolute, undeniable proof of what happened to them, was found on a trusted neighbor's wiped SD card.
And is currently sitting in a manila envelope in a Murfreesboro police evidence locker.
The unique agony of unresolved charges in the digital age is profound.
It is a completely modern problem. In the past, if a crime was committed, there was a physical crime scene.
Yeah.
There were physical clues, a piece of clothing, a witness, a footprint in the neighborhood that almost always led back to a local victim.
You could trace it.
But digital evidence is entirely disconnected from geography and time. A video file has no zip code.
It's just ones and zeros.
These victims are real human beings. Their trauma is real. The violence inflicted upon them was incredibly real. But legally, systemically, they are ghosts.
So it begs the most logical, screaming follow-up question.
Which is?
If investigators desperately need these digital ghosts to materialize, if they need these victims to come forward to resolve these charges and bring full justice to light, why aren't they?
Why the silence?
Why is no one speaking up? If he touched so many lives and so many institutions, where are the witnesses?
And the source material points the finger directly, unyieldingly, at how the community's institutions have reacted.
Or, much more accurately, how they haven't reacted.
We are looking at a deafening wall of institutional silence.
It's honestly staggering to read.
Yeah.
Every single institution that Rick Canada touched,
Let's name them again.
the local churches where he taught, the nonprofits like Special Kids, the youth programs at the YMCA, The fitness centers like the MAC,
All of them.
every single one has remained completely, utterly silent. No press releases.
Nothing.
No statements to their congregations or their members, no acknowledgement of the conviction, no pathways created for potential victims to safely come forward and speak to counselors or investigators.
Just avoid.
Nothing but avoid.
This is where we have to take a hard look at the anatomy of institutional self-preservation.
Why do they do this?
Why do institutions, often run by fundamentally good people, default to such destructive silence?
Because I don't think they're evil people running these places.
No, they usually aren't. It is almost always driven by a paralyzing fear of public relations backlash and legal liability.
The lawyers step in.
Exactly. The board of directors or the legal counsel looks at the situation and thinks, if we don't say his name, if we don't publicly acknowledge that he managed our gym or taught our Sunday school, we distance ourselves from the liability.
We didn't know, so we shouldn't say anything.
Right. If we speak, we admit we missed it and we might get sued.
But the cost of that silence isn't neutral. It's not just a passive lack of action.
No, it has active consequences.
It's an active, incredibly destructive force. The source lays out exactly what this silence communicates to a victim who might be terrified to speak up.
What does the victim hear?
When an institution stays quiet, it tells the victim, you will not be believed. He is still protected by us. You are completely on your own, and if you speak, you are fighting all of us.
Silence does not protect the institution in the long run. All it does is actively protect the offender and deeply isolate the victim.
It's devastating.
It reinforces the power dynamic the abuser relied on in the first place.
Earlier, we used the load-bearing wall analogy for how he embedded himself. I think of institutional silence, like acoustic foam in a soundproof room.
Oh, that's a really vivid image.
Right. When an institution stays quiet, it lines the walls of the community with this thick, suffocating foam. It just absorbs a victim's cry for help so nobody else outside that room ever hears it.
The sound just dies.
The victim screams, but the church's silence, or the gym's silence, deadens the sound of truth. It never reaches the public square. Public awareness, on the other hand, is a megaphone.
It shatters the soundproofing.
Exactly.
That is a deeply resonant, highly accurate way to conceptualize the mechanism of silencing. And the source documentation provides a prime historical, comparative example to illustrate this exact dynamic at play.
The Justin Holder case.
Yes, the Justin Holder case.
Let's really dive into the Justin Holder parallel, because this is the historical precedent that the Murfreesboro community desperately needs to look at right now to understand the danger they are in.
Zamir.
In the Justin Holder case, the silence wasn't just a matter of months or even a few years. It was decades.
More than 25 years.
For more than 25 years, victims actually tried to speak. This wasn't a case of total secrecy where nobody knew anything. Victims tried to warn people.
They didn't just stay quiet.
They whispered to colleagues. They tried to tell the truth to people in power.
But for 25 agonizing years, the institutions around Holder, his workplaces, his professional networks, the people sitting in positions of authority, were completely lined with that acoustic foam you mentioned.
So thick with foam.
They were silent. They were dismissive. When confronted with warnings, they minimized them.
Oh, you must have misunderstood him.
Right. They framed the complaints as misunderstandings or interpersonal conflicts, or simply chose to look the other way because Holder was, again, a load-bearing wall in his specific professional community.
And the source material explicitly states that this collective, systemic institutional silence created a literal platform of protection around him.
A platform of protection.
By refusing to acknowledge the smoke, the institutions allowed the fire to rage. This platform isolated the victims, it thoroughly discredited their lived experiences, and it emboldened the offender to keep going year after year.
Why wouldn't he if nobody stopped him?
Right. He was operating with near impunity from a fortress built entirely of everyone else's polite, legally cautious refusal to look at the ugly truth.
Which raises the most critical question for Murfreesboro today.
How do you dismantle a fortress built of silence?
Exactly. And the Holder case doesn't just show us the danger. It shows us the catalyst for change.
The turning point.
The dam finally broke in that case, not because the institution suddenly grew a conscience and did a press conference.
No, it rarely works that way.
It broke because the community itself started speaking openly. The public awareness reached a critical mass.
Exactly. The source notes that the eventual indictment of Justin Holder didn't happen because one single heroic person finally spoke up into the void.
It was a collective effort.
It happened because public awareness, the megaphone, allowed multiple survivors, victims, and witnesses to realize they weren't alone in the soundproof room.
They heard each other.
When one person's story was publicly validated, another person realized their own trauma wasn't a misunderstanding. They all felt safe enough to speak at the same time. The acoustic foam was violently ripped off the walls.
When patterns of predatory behavior are documented openly and discussed in the light of day, it completely destroys the offender's primary weapon,
Isolation.
the power of isolation. It forces institutions to reckon with the moral reality of the situation rather than hiding behind their legal liability concern.
Because the PR of staying silent becomes worse than the PR of speaking up.
Exactly. The community effectively forces the institution's hand. And this pivot from the historical context of how the Holder case was cracked open to the urgent present-day reality of the Rick Canada case is exactly what makes this deep dive so incredibly critical.
So what does this all mean for the listener? What does this mean for us right now, today?
We have to look at the timeline.
Let's reiterate the timeline that the source material lays out. Rick Canada's final appeal was just denied on March 23, 2026.
This year, just days ago.
This isn't ancient resolved history from the 1990s. This is happening right now. The ink on the final denial is barely dry.
Oh, the window is open.
This is the exact moment the truth is finally bubbling up from the digital evidence lockers to the surface of the community.
And we must make the true goal of this public awareness explicitly clear.
We really do.
This deep dive, the scrutiny being applied to the Murfreesboro Athletic Club, the YMCA, the local churches, none of this is about vengeance.
No, it's not a witch hunt.
Not at all.
And I know some people might push back on this. I want to play devil's advocate for a second because whenever a community's secret is exposed, there is a very predictable backlash.
Always. People get defensive.
Some people in the community, maybe people who knew him well and are actively grieving the loss of the man they thought he was, might say, look, the system worked.
He's in jail.
Right. He's in his 60s. He's locked up in a state penitentiary. The threat is entirely neutralized. Why are we dragging the community's name, the MHC's name, the church's name through the mud right now? The damage is done. Let sleeping dogs lie.
It's an incredibly common defense mechanism for a community in shock.
It's understandable on a human level.
They want to seal the tomb and walk away because looking inside is just too painful. They confuse institutional comfort with actual peace.
But the source material answers that exact pushback directly and powerfully. It is not about adding more years to the sentence of a man who is already incarcerated and effectively removed from society.
That's already handled.
This exposure, this demand for institutional transparency is entirely 100% about justice for the unidentified victims.
Because justice is a complex equation.
It's not just locking the door.
Society often mistakenly believes that justice is simply the successful incarceration of the guilty party. But that is only one half of the equation.
What's the other half?
True. Restorative justice requires the validation, the acknowledgement, and the healing of the victim.
Yeah.
An unresolved charge like those 2 severed counts of sexual exploitation sitting in legal limbo is an open, festering wound for the community and an ongoing trauma for the victims who have not been found.
It's about tearing down the acoustic foam. It's about creating a genuinely safe, structurally sound space for people to come forward so those severed charges can actually be legally resolved.
They need a safe runway to land on.
It's about forcing the institutions that shielded him, however inadvertently, however politely, to learn from the past, instead of just burying it under the rug of liability.
And the most important point we can make today is that it is not too late.
It's really not.
That is the hopeful part of this intense sociological analysis. It is not too late for these institutions, the board of the MA, the leadership of the YMCA, the elders of the churches, to step up and issue strong public commitments to supporting victims.
They can still speak.
Acknowledging that harm occurred under their roof does not inherently mean accepting legal fault for his individual criminal actions.
No, it means taking the moral high ground.
It means accepting profound moral responsibility for the healing of the community they claim to serve.
It's about breaking the pattern of the Justin Holder case before it takes another 25 years.
We can't let that happen again.
And that brings us to the core plea of the source material we've unpacked and our ultimate call to action for you, the person listening to this right now.
This is the most important part.
If you have information, if you were impacted by this man in any way, if you witnessed something slightly off, something that made your stomach drop at the MAC or at the YMCA or in Sunday school,
And you talked yourself out of reporting it because he was a good guy.
or even if you just need to be heard by someone who believes you, You are not alone.
There is space for you now. The institutional silence of the past protected him, but your individual choice to speak up today may protect someone else.
Your voice matters.
Your voice may be the final missing key to unlocking the handcuffs on the justice system and bringing peace to those ghosts in the machine.
We've spent this time really digging deep into what happened next door in Murfreesboro. We've looked at the horrific timeline, the terrifying reality of digital forensics and wiped memory cards, and the suffocating weight of institutional silence.
We've covered a lot of dark ground.
But I want to leave you with a lingering thought that builds on everything we've discussed, taking it beyond just one town in Tennessee.
Because this isn't just about Murfreesboro.
No, a story like this forces you to look at your own neighborhood. It forces you to look at your own local institutions with a more critical, less naive eye.
You have to look at the places you send your kids after school.
The gyms you work out in, the community centers you donate to. When the people we instinctively trust the most, the load-bearing pillars of our community, hold the darkest secrets. What is the ultimate cost of our own polite, comfortable silence?
Because at the end of the day, that medical x-ray machine we talked about at the very beginning of the hour,
Yeah.
it is a brilliant piece of technology, but it doesn't work on the human heart. It doesn't work on the complex, messy web of community secrets.
The machine can't see the silence.
The only way to see the broken bones of a community, the only way to diagnose the fractures before the whole structure collapses, is to actively turn the lights on.
To look closely without looking away.
And to actually bravely talk about what we see, even when it's uncomfortable.
In fact, especially when it's uncomfortable.
Mm.
Because comfort is exactly where predators hide.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us today in unpacking this incredibly difficult but absolutely vital topic. From all of us here, thank you for taking the time to listen to today's deep dive.